European leaders met here in England this week to push for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. And President Trump, for the first time in his second administration, has imposed tough sanctions on major Russian oil companies. Well, according to my next guest, this all could have been avoided, but the road here was paved with missed opportunities. Former NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg led the alliance from 2014 to 2024, grappling with Russia since it first annexed Crimea, and with President Trump's threats to pull out of NATO in his first term. Now, Stoltenberg has written all about it in On My Watch, and he took me behind the scenes when we met in London. Jens Stoltenberg, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
In your book, you write, "More than ever during the war, I felt a sense of inadequacy. Ukraine was in the midst of a life and death battle for its existence as a sovereign nation, and we hadn't managed to give them the help they needed. Had we provided more support earlier on, many Ukrainian lives could have been saved."
Yes, and I still believe that's a correct assessment. And of course, nobody knows, but I believe that if we had delivered substantial military support to Ukraine from 2014, then at least we would have been able to help the Ukrainians to control much more territory today after a full-scale invasion in 22. But maybe even we could have prevented the full-scale invasion.
So just around the beginning of the full-scale invasion, are you able to say now whether did you encourage leaders to provide more of these long-range important weapons at the time, or did you not think that was your role?
Yes, I did, but if I try in the book to also, what should I say, be honest about my own mistakes, and I realized today, in the hindsight, that I could have done even more to be even stronger in trying to convince allies to provide more military support to Ukraine in the years running up to the full-scale invasion.
I want to ask you about some character studies you've done. Actually, I find it really interesting. So at one point, and I think you've said this publicly, you decided when you met President Zelensky again, that he was one of the best leaders of our time. Just give me a why you think that.
When I met him first in 2019, I liked him, but I didn't regard him as a big political leader, a strong political leader. He turned out to be an extremely strong political leader with personal courage and also the skills to inspire a whole nation and a whole world to support him. And it's hard to imagine any political leader that could have done anything similar for his country as President Zelensky.
You call Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov a unique combination of an elegant diplomat and a bully. And you also write that he insulted you at one point in a meeting. "Why am I even sitting here?" he said. "You have no opinions of your own, Stoltenberg. You say only what your bosses permit you to say." How shocking was that?
It was not very shocking, but because that had been more or less his style for a long time. But this particular meeting was a bit worse than the others. But on the other hand, I continue to believe that at some stage we need to talk to Russians. It's possible to talk to the Russians, even if they are rude in the way they are in some of those conversations.
And not constructive. I mean, I don't understand how you keep talking to them. You say, we should talk, as you say, even though his manner was rough and occasionally unpleasant. This time there was absolutely nothing constructive. No matter what topic we switched to, I could hardly complete a sentence before he butted in. Your book is full of very fun anecdotes about behind the scenes. That one of the most important moments was the NATO summit in Brussels in 2018. You write, "This might be the meeting at which NATO is ruined, I thought, and it's happening on my watch. The alliance had managed to operate successfully for 70 years, but not after 12th of July 2018, which was this summit." So this was because Trump said, unless you put up this amount of money, I'm walking out. Just tell us how chilled you felt. What was everybody feeling at that summit right now? A lot has been written about it, but it's interesting to hear.
No, we were extremely concerned because we actually feared that President Trump was going to leave the whole meeting, and they have packed their luggages and ready to leave. And he stated that if you don't promise to pay more now, immediately, I will leave, and you need NATO more than I do. We had a kind of emergency meeting.
With him in the room still?
With him in the room, and most of the other people left, so it was only the heads of state and government, and we had a very open discussion. And he pinpointed each and every ally and read out exactly how much they pay, and most of them paid, of course, far too little. But at the and of course, if the US president had left a NATO summit and declared that he was not longer willing to defend NATO allies, then NATO would have ceased to exist. Also on paper, we will still have been an alliance, but in reality, it wouldn't longer deliver deterrence, because deterrence is in the mind of your adversary, and if the biggest ally say will not defend, then the whole deterrence disappears. So after that meeting, he actually went out and said that he was, I think it was 110% in favor of NATO. So it ended well, and I remember you were there.
Yes. Well, I did an interview with you afterwards, and you say it ended well, but there was a confusion, and I tried to get through the confusion.
Yeah.
Trump was saying one thing, President Macron, Chancellor Merkel was saying another thing about this extra spend. And I tried to get you to give it to me straight. So you write now in your book, I couldn't, of course, confirm the facts. There was no new agreement, no new pledges beyond the 2014 resolution. But I couldn't simply come out and say that, because then I would be contradicting Trump and risk him withdrawing support. And so we went on. Several confusing rounds. Amanpour asked clear and precise questions and received vague and unclear answers from you. As you know, that's been a big complaint of mine through your 10 years of NATO. But now you're going to be frank. What were you thinking when I was trying to get the truth out of you? And you were obfuscating.
No, but I thought that actually you saw the contradiction in the messages.
But you still didn't clarify.
No, but the reason is that when you're Secretary General of NATO, there is one main responsibility, and that is to keep this alliance together. And then I cannot say that Trump is wrong, that there is no new agreement, and I cannot say that the others are right either. So I need to find a way to paper over those disagreements. And I felt it was a bit strange or stupid, but that was my task, to keep this alliance together, and we succeeded.
Jens Stoltenberg, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks so much for having me.